Hey folks, Alan Saunders joined by Mike Asti on Pittsburgh Sports Live. It's Pittsburgh postgame after the Pirates drop another one to the Milwaukee Brewers. 6-5 losers up in the House of Horrors, as it's known by some. Miller Park has not been a friendly place for the Pirates over the years. It was not a friendly place tonight as they fall 6-5 in eighth inning single against Chris Stratton as the Brewers come through late in the game after the Pirates had tied it up. A nice piece of hitting by Jose Osuna, scored 2 runs to make it a tie game. Brewers pull ahead 6-5. The Pirates are now 10 wins and 22 losses. Brewers at 16 and 18. Pirates maintain their hold on last place in Major League Baseball, which seems to be pretty much the only reason to reference the standings from this point forward. And of course, from this point forward, we'll be dealing with trade-free baseball, as August 31st was the trade deadline in the major leagues in this weird shortened season. They'll trade them with about, I guess, a little less than half of the games to go. Pirates with no action on that front whatsoever, as they basically stand pat with the group they had today at the trade deadline after general manager Ben Cherington traded center fielder Gerard Dyson earlier in the week leading up to the deadline. Mike, well, let's start with the game here. This seems to be one of those classic Pirates losses where this was a game this year where they were kind of in it, and there were some individual performances that you like a little bit. Eric Gonzalez hits a nice home run. Jose Osuna, I mentioned, with a clutch hit. I thought Stallings had a nice game, but just not quite good enough to beat what is at 16 and 18 a decidedly mediocre Milwaukee Brewers team.
Yeah, mediocre Milwaukee Brewers team, but with the exception of that one series where the Pirates were able to shockingly sweep the Brewers a couple weeks back, a still decidedly better Milwaukee Brewers team with more talent than the Pirates. And it's one of those games where it's kind of been how most of these games have gone throughout the season when the Pirates lose. The starter fails to go through 5 innings. Trevor Williams only going 4 in this one, giving up a myriad of runs in the game. It's up to the Pirates bullpen, and recently, the Pirates bullpen hasn't been that bad. It's been better than earlier in the season, but it's still a lot to rely on the bullpen to save you. The offense didn't do enough. You see Eric Gonzalez with a couple hits. It's great that he finally gets something going in the leadoff position after struggling once he got into that leadoff position after previously hitting when he was hitting lower in the order. But not only does a starter not go far into a game, but the main contributors that you got to have contribute offensively do not. Josh Bell, once again, failing to get on base. Gregor Polanco, who many were talking about being back, and he had that renaissance of a weekend where he hit the game-winning home run. It was nice to see for him, a little bit of a feel-good Sunday afternoon, but it's been nothing since then. That was an aberration this year, and he continues to really, really struggle, barely getting over 100 batting average. So just another game where they're not good enough. They are seemingly the worst team in baseball based on what we've seen in terms of games played this year and how they're actually playing. And it comes on a bit of a thud for even the fan base today, because this is a season where if you're not going to contend, you're going to lose. You'd want to be able to sell the farm. We've talked about on past shows, this is a season where they are going to need to really sell and try that rebuild, whether they want to call it that or not able to really fully sell because of the circumstances, because of the low level of value for many of these players, but then they finish it off with yet another loss.
Yeah, I think the two things are completely linked, right? I mean, you can't really get away from it. The Pirates didn't trade anybody at the trade deadline because all the Pirates that the Pirates could trade are playing like crap and have been all season, right? I mean, and that's also why they're in last place in the majors. This is not that bad of a baseball team, or at least it shouldn't have been. All the reliable prediction algorithms, all the betting markets had them at like about a 24-25 win pace on this shortened season, and they're going to come well short of that. Maybe by 4 or 5 wins easily right now, and it's because they have these players that were supposed to be part of the core of their team: Josh Bell, Gregory Polanco, Brian Reynolds, Adam Frazier, that just aren't producing to a level that is not only not what they have done in the past,
Right,
but it's
not even
even
acceptable.
acceptable for a major league player.
No, this is not acceptable. That's the word. Everyone knew they weren't going to contend this year. Most reasonable fans, you would even figure that maybe they're not going to play like they were in the past. And Brian Reynolds, you're not going to expect to set records for a young career in terms of doubles for a Pirate, but it's not acceptable play. Polanco's hitting 114. Yes, it's a condensed season, even more so for him, but it's several weeks in, plenty of at-bats, and hitting 114. Bell hitting 212, 0 for 3, more strikeouts for him, just barely making contact. It's nice to see Eric Gonzalez with a couple hits. It's nice to see Stallings, and I saw you said this the other day, and it's very, very true. Stallings is the MVP of this team. They're going to name a team MVP despite being the worst in baseball, and it's him. If he doesn't get it, it's a crime to his family that really deserves it for the flack they caught when his father was head coach of the University of Pittsburgh's basketball team when you were covering him. So he deserves that, to put it on the mantle and be able to talk about that over Thanksgiving dinner. But it's going to be following one of the worst seasons ever that, fortunately for this group, they're going to get a mulligan because of COVID-19 in the situation. But a close game. They didn't come back towards the end like some other ones, but just not good enough because the guys you got to have produce aren't getting it done. And we've talked about this too in past post-game shows. The Pirates, weirdly enough, a lot of these small market teams are excited about 60 games because they have more of a chance. Look at the Marlins. They have more of a chance. They could crawl in this year, and we'll get to that later with a former Pirate now being a member of the Marlins and several former Pirates members of the Marlins. But a Pirate franchise can't rebuild, and the value's worse for these guys. In the back of the Charrington's mind, he's probably thinking, I would have rather not played at all because I could have tried to trade Bell and Reynolds. Reynolds is part of the future, but Bell and several others, and got more for them than what you're getting out of what they're actually producing now.
Yeah, and I mean, let's not forget they've had a significant string of injuries that need to be talked about, especially in the pitching staff. Sure. And again, that's another thing that ends up hurting them today. We should be talking about them and the return they get for Chris Archer and Keone Kela. And instead, those two guys have pitched a combined 2 games for the Pirates this year. And that's two of their, not only is that 2 of their most tradable assets, that ought to be their best 2 pitchers, and they didn't pitch at all. So Kyle Crick is another guy who, obviously still has some team control, but if he's pitching like he is capable of pitching right now on the injured list, is a guy that you could envision bringing back a huge return. Ben Charrington basically said today, we couldn't get anything for these guys. That none of the offers met what they found as acceptable. Well, when you're dealing with guys like a Chad Kuhl, a Trevor Williams, who was not great, but I guess okay.
He's had better starts than this.
Three earned in 4 is not going to kill you. But Trevor Williams, Chad Kuhl, Joe Musgrove, guys with tenure on their contracts. You can't. You can trade them, but it's difficult. It's very difficult when they're not playing real well because those are complicated trades. You want to get the full value out of that player that you feel like you deserve if you're going to forgo those years of control. The ones that you push send on are the guys who are, the contracts are coming up. They're going to be free agents. Okay, get something for them. Get rid of them. The Pirates just don't even have any of those guys. And maybe we can talk about the offseason approach of Ben Charrington. I think it was pretty hands-off. He basically didn't do anything. But the one thing the Pirates did do is trade Starling Marte, a guy with some tenure left. And, before the season anyway. He had been one of the few guys they could have traded today. I don't know. It seems like if you looked at Starling Marte and Chris Archer at the beginning of the season, that was pretty much the same thing, right? Guys that underperformed their contract or maybe just pitched okay, but not good enough for a bottom of the barrel team to be able to afford to keep paying. They trade Marte, keep Archer. Archer's hurt. He's not pitching. I don't know. It just seems like a series of really, I don't think this team was left in a good place by Neil Huntington. I think the team has to be in a good place the team has to be in a bad place for the general manager to get fired. But I think also a bunch of really bad stuff has happened since then too, that all led up to a trade deadline 0 for Ben Charrington and this team.
No, that's definitely the case. Although the only fair point and the counterpoint to the injuries, most of those injuries affected more of what you're saying in terms of rebuilding and the trade deadline for the future than they did actually to contend this year. I think any of those thoughts that people did have in those conversations for a couple of days to have some fun on Twitter, where people were saying, okay, now there's going to be more playoff teams. Somebody out of nowhere is going to crawl in here that's unexpected. There's some young talent here. We know what Reynolds did last year. We know what Bell's done in the past. Maybe something could happen here if everyone gets lucky and they somehow would at least be near that final wild card spot towards the end of the year. Regardless, even if Chris Archer was there, that wasn't going to happen. We saw what Chris Archer was giving this team the last year or so once he was traded there. He's been a shell of his former self with the Rays. So that was very, very unlikely regardless, even if this team was healthy. But what it would have done is provided more value for today to be able to get something. Even if you didn't get the value of Chris Archer when you brought him in and you still lost that deal, you still would get something for your future. Something is better than nothing. And they're basically now just wasting away some of those players. I would imagine most people probably figured that if you told them this season is going to be one of the worst in history and this player's not going to return, which is very, very likely in terms of a long-term deal, and that's Josh Bell, you would trade him at this deadline for sure. That's been the MO for Pirate GMs. It's Cherington just got there, but that's been the MO, that if the player's not going to be there long-term, especially when they're not going to win, they're going to trade that piece, even if they don't get that much for him. And we leave the day, Josh Bell on the team, striking out again, not getting on base, not getting any hits, and still very much uncertain of his future as a Pittsburgh Pirate. And really, I think we've also touched on this on past shows. I think the way this season has unfolded, Ben Cherington's probably watching these games thinking to himself, who really do I want to be a part of the future of this team? I'd imagine Brian Reynolds is going to be that guy because he was so great last year. He's so young. There's still years of control, and he's showed signs of life a little bit more this year than Bell. But besides Reynolds, who are you married to? Who is part of the future? Is it maybe nobody? And that leaves you in a situation where you're behind even trying to rebuild because you get nothing in this deadline and you don't really have anyone that you can say you're building around. Back in 2009, as bad as those years were, you at least could say to yourself, this team is bad now. But when we're good, whenever that is, it's going to be with Andrew McCutchen as the best player. It's going to be with Marte. It's going to be with these players and Pedro Alvarez. But who is that now besides maybe Reynolds?
It's a long way away. I mean, I think that's I'm not even sure it's Reynolds. I'll be perfectly honest.
Okay.
Like it doesn't, I mean, he's 25. Like, it's not like he's 19.
Sure.
To me, I just feel like this has been an entire wasted season for the Pirates. They didn't get anything out of the guys they brought in. Guys, you take a flyer on guys like Colin and Dyson, Guillermo Heredia, Luke Maley. You're trying to catch some fire with a guy and then trade him for something. They get nothing for all those guys. They get $250,000 worth of international bonus money for Dyson earlier in the week, but I mean, essentially nothing of consequence for those guys. They don't develop any prospects because there's no minor leagues, so there's no prospect development happening. Right. They don't develop any prospects in the majors because they don't really have any that are close to the majors, and the ones that they do have, they haven't brought up yet. We'll get to Brian Hayes here in a minute, who's coming up likely for tomorrow's game. Yeah. But and most things that looked like solid places on the team or maybe places where you were a little bit hopeful coming into this year have turned into giant question marks. Josh Bell has 2 years left. He's got 21 and 22 under team control. You would have thought coming into this year, either Josh Bell is the starting first baseman or the Pirates will trade him for a whole lot.
Or you're trading him, yes. Yeah. Especially because with the universal designated hitter, he can do a lot for a lot of teams.
Just trading him for a lot.
You would, in order to rebuild properly.
Sure they could have traded Josh Bell, but you're thinking, well, if they got to trade Josh Bell, that's a kind of franchise altering trade where you're getting multiple top prospects back.
If he's a 30
you're putting together the group of prospects that you're talking about, where you're saying when you make that trade, you're saying these are the guys we're going to win with. Okay, wherever they are, whether they get them in single A or double, whatever, these are the guys we're going to win with. That's how you sell that trade. Right. You can't even make that. I don't even know what you could think about the first base position going forward. I look at and Adam Frazier is not the same kind of prospect or player, but the same thing at second base, the same thing in left field.
I think the most disappointing part of it
That's
is
the only plot. Even the starting rotation, Joe Musgrove, essentially his season's a wash because of injury.
Yeah.
Jameson Taillon's out. Chris Archer's out. Okay, but there's still some other guys in that rotation that you could maybe feel a little bit differently. Has any of I guess Chad Kuhl maybe has.
I'm a Chad Kuhl guy.
I think he's impressed well enough that he's probably going to get a spot in the starting rotation next year. But it's not like Mitch Keller's been hurt. That's four starters. There's been nobody that stepped up and offset all these negatives by being a surprising positive. Usually, even if you have a really bad year, somebody plays above expectations outside of Stallings.
Well, Brian Reynolds last year.
Yeah, outside of Stallings and maybe Chad Kuhl, there's nobody on the team doing that. And I think that's why this whole season has essentially been a wash. They're going to start next year no closer to competing for anything of relevance than they were at the beginning of this year. And that was solidified today.
And not only that, are they going to start further away? The fans are going to feel they're further away because, again, they came into this year and at the end of last year, nobody thought they're going to win the pennant, but there was some hope because of the shortened season because of COVID. I think you even have lost the most optimistic Pirate fans based on how this season has unfolded. And now they all kind of realize that, like you're saying, there's really no glimmer of hope. There's really no positive here except for the emergence of Stallings. He's a guy that was so great defensively in the system that you wanted to see if he could hit at all, and then maybe he'd be your guy of the future. If he can hit like this and one hit every couple of days with his defense, with his command of a staff, then he might be your guy in the future. Eric Gonzalez is a guy that we've harped on, and he's been in our up column most of these post-game shows, but he deserves it. He's somebody that there was hype on years ago. He has not achieved that, but now he's getting it done in a little bit of a solid role here, and now in a leadoff spot. I don't really like him there, but still, he's played well and deserves the playing time. Derek Shelton's been heavily outmanaged most of this season, but to be fair to him, and I've said this before, he can't really criticize a rookie manager with so much talent that's not there and the talent that is there that's not playing well and below themselves. But I think the real issue this year, everything you said is true, but Josh Bell being as bad as he's been is the problem, because as you mentioned, if he even was halfway to what he was in the past of, say, early last season, even at the end of last season when he was at least getting on base better than this, even though his power wasn't there, if he could give some contender some glimmer of a belief that he could hit 30 home runs in a year or 25 even, then you would get enough value for him to be able to rebuild with. But that possibility, someone will take a chance on a guy, I'm sure, especially since you can DH him, but the value is not going to be there. They're going to want to lowball the Pirates with how bad he's been now, even going to the end of last season. And in a perfect storm, if somebody could have told you there's a universal designated hitter and his only problem is defense, that's gone. You can get him as a DH for you in the National League. His value, you'd figure, would be higher. But he's struggled so much offensively that he's just a strikeout machine. He's basically become a poor man's Adam Dunn, where Adam Dunn could at least be an on-base machine. Yes, he would strike out tons and his average would be low, but he would hit home runs, drive-in runs, and he would get on base with walks. Josh Bell's not getting on base at all. It's strikeout, feast or famine, and it's very rarely feast.
Well, the Pirates will, I don't know. They're going to turn the page tomorrow and stick, they got the Cubs coming back to Pittsburgh, and it'll be Chad Kuhl, who 2.52 ERA.
Again, he's been the best pitcher this year.
And he'll have John Lester, who's, a fun guy to watch. Crafty old lefty,
especially throwing back to the catcher.
He's got his quirks, right?
Yeah.
But to me, the big story today is no trades, and an hour before the trade deadline, it leaks to multiple outlets that Ke'Bryan Hayes will be coming up. Pirates top prospect in AAA anyway, third baseman, son of former major leaguer Charlie Hayes, and I don't know, maybe I'm just a deeply cynical, deeply skeptical media guy.
You deserve it
Look,
at this point.
I just okay, right? Like, okay, don't picture you know, uh don't picture Ben Charrington, who I don't have a deep relationship with
Right.
or know that well, but he seems to be like a very good
And you can't form one under these COVID
okay.
circumstances.
But just picture Mr. Burns, okay, and Smithers there, right at the trade deadline. It says, they want us to do something.
Yeah.
Sir, no one will take any of these players. Call up Hayes, then that'll make them happy. Like that's a
good impression.
Is that what this feels like? What this is that they understand that their trade deadline was embarrassing to go on top of the rest of the embarrassing season, and so we'll give the people the call up they've been begging for 3 weeks anyway. Maybe that'll make them happy. I don't know. Listen, I argued against calling up Ke'Bryan Hayes. I said there is nobody in this system that really showed themselves to be something that you didn't know that they already were this year. Ke'Bryan Hayes is not going to do that. He's a top prospect. You already think he's eventually going to be good. The only outcomes are bad, right? Either he's going to hit okay, play great defense, and you're still going to think Ke'Bryan Hayes is your third baseman in the future, but you just wasted a bunch of his service time, or he comes up and struggles, and then it's just more bad to go on to me. There's either nothing or there's bad. There's no good possible outcome of bringing him up because we've already established that this season's a wash and they're going to be terrible next season anyway. So I don't see what the rush is. So I'm against the idea of bringing him up in general, but to me, I am just deeply cynical about the timing of him getting called up on deadline day. The same day they basically attempted to say, hey, anybody, take any of these guys, and the answer was no.
Yeah, and we know that this is still the same ownership group that refuses. They will not even let us talk about it. They won't use the brand of that we're rebuilding. Everybody knows they're rebuilding, but they don't like to use the term rebuilding. So it is interesting when you have that situation in the timing of this move. I was going to say, well, can it really hurt in terms of if he plays poorly? You can't be too critical of the guy because it would be his rookie attempts at Major League Baseball, and you're comparing him to Bell, Reynolds, etc., Polanco, who have been much worse and have had their worst year of their careers this year. So if he plays poorly, it shouldn't be where you and I and the rest of the media and fans are going to pound the guy for being so bad. That's the common theme of this Pirates club. But the negative is you lose the service time, because even if he's bad this year, you're going to still say to yourself, we're going to give him a chance to be better next year. He's still going to be our guy of the future. He's more of somebody we're confident in than the rest of this lineup. So unless they're doing the Mr. Burns thing, which I got to ask you, I feel like you spent time working on that impersonation as well as watching the game the last few hours.
That was
off the cuff?
That was totally off the cuff.
Okay. That's good. That's a good one then. I will
concept on Twitter earlier in a little bit different form as just a tweet, but yeah, I mean that's what it totally. I don't know.
That was money. That was a good impersonation.
Maybe I'm just super jaded, but I don't know.
I'm there with you. I hear it.
That seemed pretty.
It'll at least give fans something to watch.
It's always. I mean, let me peel back the curtain a little bit here. When you see like multiple outlets reporting the same leak at the same, like, okay, this is not like somebody had it from his agent or this was like, hey, we're doing this, but you didn't hear it from me, right? I mean, that's when you see that come across in that form where everybody has the news at exactly the same time, somehow sources, right? That was leaked. That was put out there. And I have to think it was put out there, with the intention of maybe
let me ask you this then.
Away from a dismal trade deadline.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is that the only thing that you think of? Because as much as he won't admit this, most people do believe that he does care a little bit what fans think, which is why he won't use the term rebuilding. So is that the driving force here, in your opinion, that the fans are upset? It's further away than we thought. We know we have to rebuild. We don't want to say so. These players that at least they were rooting for last year are really, really sucking. So we're going to give, when Mike keeps asking on these postgame shows, what are you going to watch for? His answer is going to be Hayes. Is that the thinking here?
Well,
even though you lose the service time, is it?
I don't know.
Fans in a way?
I don't know. I haven't heard an explanation. I don't think
Yeah.
If Ben Cherington was asked about it today, I didn't see that. But,
I didn't see that.
you know, if you're going to try to look, I mean, how long until they have to start trying to get season ticket renewals for next year?
That's
right?
what I'm
Like,
saying.
they've
Yeah.
got
The
to give
fan
some people
perception.
something to watch and to think about and to hope for.
Losing the service time does suck, though, because we know that you got to have a lot to be able to re-sign with the Pirates for them to bring you back here.
And we already know the next season is non-competitive. So, you know, usually you have that like 2 months where if you hold a guy back until June, you know, you get the extra year and you avoid the Super 2. Well, what would be the downside to holding him back till next June? Give him all the rest of the at-bats he can handle in 2021 to get himself ready for the major leagues.
Do you not want him to be so far from playing, though? Do you not want him to be so far from competitive baseball?
I don't know. Everybody else is going to be too. I don't know. Yeah, I guess maybe that's to me.
It would be a long time.
To me, if that was the concern, you bring him up with 2 weeks left in the season, right?
Okay.
You know, or 10 days and give him a taste, you know, like,
I could see that. Yeah.
A September call up kind of situation. But yeah, I mean, I would be trying to hold Hayes back until the middle of June next year and get another year. Not, you know, get paid for this wipeout year and give him another one. Because, like, you have to bet on him being a solid prospect, right? Now, some of these other guys, I don't know, maybe they could have Will Craig up here hitting a little bit to see what he can do with a bat at this level.
Right.
He hasn't done anything to impress in Indy. There aren't really any other guys that they could call up that would move the needle in any sort of meaningful fashion.
It feels like it is a fan thing, though. It does feel like a little bit of
that is the one
excitement.
The one thing they can do, and I'll tell you what, like, you know, maybe for service time purposes, giving him another 2 weeks would have been interesting. But in another 2 weeks, we're going to have football and nobody's going to watch another Pirate game the rest of the summer. So if it really is to get some eyeballs on this guy that they think is a young star and to get him in front of the fans and to build some hope of some excitement for next season, well, let's see. The Steelers start on the 14th. So they've got it's the 31st. They've got 2 weeks to make it happen, right?
Exactly. 2 weeks.
Because as far as this town's concerned, I'll say this. Like, I covered Pitt football for a very long time. I am very aware of its status as the fourth by a mile sports option in this town. Okay. Pitt starts the 12th against Austin P. That will be the last time there's a Pirates game. Like that's it. Like you'll have actually the NFL starts.
I was gonna say, because the Steelers play Monday Night Football, as we know, they don't even get that weekend early. They don't even get the elongated weekend.
No. So that's it. Like, Pitt's kickoff is the end of baseball season in Pittsburgh this year. You can just end it. The Pirates' niche in the sporting world since their run of positive play in the early part of the last decade has been to get Pittsburgh fans between the Stanley Cup playoffs and the beginning of preseason football. Well, the Stanley Cup playoffs did them a favor by lasting until the middle of August, but preseason football isn't happening. So they got to get us all the way to September 14th before everybody turns off their TV for Pirates games this year.
At least the Penguins didn't make a run, though, because if the Penguins would have made a run,
it could have been zero.
It could have been nothing. Yeah.
But I guess we will see Brian Hayes be the story in Pittsburgh sports for 2 weeks. And God,
probably. We'll talk about it. It will be here.
We'll talk about it. We'll be here. We'll talk about other baseball and baseball adjacent things.
We're gonna do this,
Simpsons,
we're helping them out. We're doing what they want. We're right now. I mean, inadvertently, that's not the plan.
I don't know if I was helping at all. I'll be perfectly honest.
The Mr. Burns impression. You don't think that's something they're gonna play back? And
I don't think I did myself or them any favors with that.
It was radio gold.
Do you want to do 3 up, 3 down? Let's real quick. Just
we will
hit them quick.
Okay, well, Stallings is definitely one. He's team MVP for sure of the year. I would say Eric Gonzalez definitely has to be another one. In terms of some downs, again, it's going to be the major stars. When you look at Frazier 1 for 4, Newman 0 for 4, Bell 0 for 3, Moran coming back, scoring a run, 2 strikeouts. I guess his appearance this year maybe is somewhat of a good thing. Polanco 0 for 4. Polanco has just been embarrassing himself. And I get that Robbie and the fans and everybody on broadcast are rooting for this man. It's like nobody wants to criticize him because he's a good guy and he has a cool nickname. but sucking is not even the word. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And then Tucker isn't up. He'll be my third up. Tucker's actually having a couple solid games. He had a solid one today, two runs scored. Yeah, it's only multiple runs scored man in the game. So you got to give it to him. Trevor Williams, okay. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a down because you don't get through four. Any more downs you have? I mean, obviously there's plenty of them.
I got an up. So
Okay.
The Pirates last place in the majors, right? And they kept themselves there by losing. And their competition right now for that
this is an up.
spot,
Yes.
is the Los Angeles Angels, who have the best player in the last 10 years of baseball. So listen, yes, the Pirates are bad, but at least they're not somehow almost as bad while at the same time having the best player in the world on their team and in the lineup every day. I have to imagine if you gave the Pirates Mike Trout, they could win more than 2 more games than they have with him. Like, that is just embarrassing.
It's not even so much this year because obviously the Angels payroll, Mike Trout, who's a generational talent, and they're competing with the Pirates, who have very little talent, a lot of players playing poorly, and an incredibly poor payroll for the worst team in baseball. But Pirate fans also want to say, well, you wasted McCutchen because you didn't win a playoff series, or you wasted this player, or you wasted that player. They could waste Brian Reynolds or Josh Bell. Talk about wasting a star. It might be the most greatest injustice in sports history if he continues his progression. You're saying he's the best in the last 10 years. There's an argument he's going to finish as the greatest baseball player of all time if you really look at it analytically. And to this point, he's appeared in 1 playoff series. It is a divisional round loss, and that's it.
And the third worst team is the Boston Red Sox, who have like an $83 million payroll. So, yes, things are terrible. We just spent the last, what are we on here, 40 minutes?
If they're going to be bad, you don't want to
telling you about how bad they are and how bad everything is.
Right. And it is bad. It is bad.
It could definitely be worse. They could have spent $83 million on this team, or they could have the best player in baseball and still be just as bad. So I'm going to go with that's an up. Also, I really do think that now, there is no hope of anything other than being bad. They should be actively trying to get last place. Like Pirates fans now need to root for losses. Like I really do think that. And so 6-5.
I think most fans are, but
a 6-5 loss win for the Black and Gold in Milwaukee as they lose the game, but gain 8 points. In the chase for the number 1 pick. Although we don't really know how the winning team will get that number 1.
Yeah, they would do it in this year.
Leave it to baseball to leave that unsaid through this point. I talked about tomorrow, John Lester, Chad Kuhl on the mound. Pirates against the Cubs at home. Not a Pirates Pittsburgh post game tomorrow night, but we will be broadcasting as the Riverhounds have a game, and Matt Geica and John Krasinski will be here in this space at this time, or roughly this time. I guess the soccer matches go by a little bit more quickly. The Hounds at home against Loudoun United, 7 p.m. kickoff. They're playing very, they had, if you haven't seen any of the matches recently, that match against Hartford over the weekend, and the play of the wingbacks, Jordan Dover and Ryan James, is just impressive. So if you're
winning team,
into the beautiful game at all, or if you're just into seeing the team in black and gold win and being able to feel good about it, go check out the Riverhounds highlights, and then watch tomorrow night Hounds and Loudoun. And Loudon's in Virginia. I don't know. That's like the name of a county. It's such a weird name.
It sounds like an Irish kind of like Irish beer.
I guess it is kind of like that, like how all the soccer teams want to have like FC in their name and pretend like they're Europe. So Loudoun County. That's what they should be, though. They should be Loudoun County, like they're in Britain or something. Loudoun United on the pitch at Highmark Stadium tomorrow night. Matt Geica and John Krasinski here. Mike Asti, Alan Saunders, Pittsburgh post game. Pirates lose 6-5. We'll be back at it later this week. More baseball coming up.
I'm sure you'll see us again.
And that on the horizon right there is football season. It's coming.
It's coming. You'll
Thanks
see
for
more of
watching
us there.
Pittsburgh post game.